All right, you've got an epic tale of conflict between kingdoms and nations and all of that, religions and everything, make the makings of a really epic, grand tale. However, you're not sure how to start off the main conflict. Let's chat about it. Let's see if we can come up with a little idea, bestie, on this episode of the StoryPod podcast.
Come on in, bestie. Welcome to StoryPod, where we do the doing of story development together. Brought to you by Creative BFF.
All right, so obviously we still out here. Obviously, we're still not in the main space that you usually see me in, and I'm going to be doing some changes to that. I'm trying to see if I can make it so that I don't have to set up a green screen every time I need to record a video. So the next video may be in a slightly modified space. But anyway, that's not what you came for. Welcome. My name is Ashley. Okay. I am your creative BFF. And this is the StoryPod podcast. And I would love to answer your story questions if you have any. Please feel free to shoot me a question. You can put a little comment down below. You can send me a message through my website, creativebff.com, or you can send me an email, ash@creativebff.com. Or if YouTube has like a messaging thing, you could try that. You can also hit me up on Instagram, which should be your_creative BFF, and shoot me a little message. Okay. Instagram might be the best place to send me a message if you have a question that I can answer here on the podcast. But anyway, all of that is neither here nor there because we are doing one of the favorite things on this show to do, which is answering a question from Reddit, only because you and I have not connected yet. Okay. I would love to answer your question, but barring that, here we go. As always, I'm going to avert my little eyes so that I can answer this question or read the question to you rather. And it's kind of long, so I'm going to skip certain things that are not material to your understanding of the question. However, it will be on screen if you would like to pause and read. So it is from the r/fantasy writers subreddit. I'm writing a fantasy novel about continents, monarchies, and wars. It has some similarities with A Song of Ice and Fire, but it's more focused on economics with little magic and no dragons. I'm posting here because I'm struggling with how to start the main conflict. The idea of political problems between kingdoms has been used a lot in other novels, so I'm trying to include religious wars to make it feel different. I've already developed a solid backstory. The world makes sense, and I've thought through all the plot holes. I've even drawn maps that show the world at different points in time, before and after rebellions. Despite all that, I still have some doubts I can't quite solve. How can I include all of the conflicts in a way that feels natural? I have an outline for the main plots, but I'm not sure how to connect them smoothly. Since the kingdoms speak different languages, should I translate the characters' names? For example, should Alexander become Alejandro, depending on the region? Another idea I'm playing with is uniting kingdoms under one religion for a holy war. There are 2 continents, and one of them has already been unified under a monotheistic religion. Should the first chapters focus on the wars between the 9 kingdoms, or would it be better to first introduce the world and its political and religious structure? I'm a perfectionist and I often get stuck on the small details. I'm also a bit pessimistic about myself, and this is the first time I actually believe in something I'm creating. I feel the story has real potential and I'd really appreciate any advice or feedback. So I literally only skipped the first the first paragraph of that, or the first sentence of that. So a lot of really good questions here, and some that I'm probably not going to be able to directly answer because I believe that they require specific information about the story that the poster has created. So for example, how can I include all of the conflicts in a way that feels natural? I will say that my general overall first idea about how to begin including all of the conflicts in a way that feels natural is probably going to deal with the characters. That is going to be the through line for my answer to this question. The main part of this question that I want to focus on that I think is important is how to start the conflict. for your book. And I feel like best practice, because listen, I'm gonna be honest, I'm gonna be real. Political fantasy drama is generally not my steez. Does anybody still say that? It's not the type of book that I go to. However, if you have some really good characters that I'm interested in, I can find my way through this political drama. You know what I'm saying? So the characters and their goals and all of that, I think, is going to be the main crux of starting the conflict. I think, this is my opinion, you let me know if you think the same thing. I think that if you don't, and I'm not saying that this writer, the poster, doesn't have characters that we'll be following, but if you don't, and it's really just about clashes of kingdoms with no personalization, nothing that we can grab onto as an audience member, a person that's going to take us through these conflicts and through the story, who we are rooting for, then I think the danger is that it can start to feel like an encyclopedia entry. I was going to say even a documentary, like a historical documentary, but even historical documentaries, I think maybe even more modern ones, I'm not sure. I like documentaries. I haven't watched a bunch recently. And when I watch documentaries, it's usually not like the history of this empire, you know what I'm saying? But usually I'm thinking there are probably characters that add interest, kings, queens, soldiers, people who have done crazy, amazing things that have shifted the direction and the balance of power of a particular empire, because it's really all about people, right? So what I would say is, starting the conflict, I'm going to say we need to have it centering around some characters and antagonists. So for example, let me try to think. This person doesn't really say exactly all of the different conflicts, but it's like, okay, we've got political conflict. I'm looking over at the question, and we've got religious wars. And those are kind of the only two things. Oh, and economics. So we got economic conflicts, political problems, and religious wars. And those are kind of like a good, interesting backdrop for the characters that I hope that you have developed, right? I don't think they really mention characters. So let's say, they do have Alexander versus Alejandro. So let's say you've got characters that maybe represent each of these particular conflicts. I don't know how many characters you want to have. So say you have like someone who would represent like the religious conflict. I don't know if it would be like a priest or a paladin or whatever the case may be. And you have somebody who represents the economic issues. I don't know if that could potentially be someone who is basically poor, right? Struggling, but they're going to be a main character. And then you've got somebody who's representing the kingdom. These political clashes, and somehow they all maybe work together. Maybe one of those is like a main villain of the story, and the other two have to come together. Or you could have one person that embodies two of those categories. But basically, we need a character and their goal to follow. And if it's like a king, or if it's like a high-ranking religious official or something like that, then okay, that's easy to tie them into the grand scheme of what the story is going to be following, the world-changing conflicts. I think that another way to begin thinking about it is thinking about the end of the story, thinking about where you want the story to end up. Where are your characters going to end up? Are we going to have one of these issues kind of taking precedence? Do they all feed each other? Let me see what they said. They have a backstory. They've thought through all the plot holes. They have all the maps, the rebellions, like they've done all that pre-work. And I think that, yeah, I'm not going to belabor it because I'm trying to make up ideas for a story that I don't have enough information about. So I don't want to belabor this. The answer, I think, which is what I would direct them to, this is the direction that I would go in if I were coaching this person one-on-one, would be, well, let's see how we can weave all of these different conflicts in through and channel them through your main characters and your main antagonist. Because that's going to be the most interesting, I think, for the audience. And that's kind of like how all of these things can be united, because they are connected. The economics, the religious, and the political, there are connections. But in terms of for your story, weaving them all together is going to rely heavily on how the characters are moving through this world, what their goal is, and where the story ends up based on the character decisions, based on the antagonist. So that's my answer. You know what? I'm going to stop right there. I'm just going to let it rest. I'm going to just put that on the table and I'm going to let it rest. And I'm going to push it across to you, viewer, audience member, fellow writer, and story developer. And, I'm going to leave the ball in your court here. The TLDR for us today is that the way that I would begin weaving all of the different conflicts together is through the journey of the main characters and the antagonist. Point blank, period. All right, I'm just going to leave it right there. That's my answer. What do you think? Real short one, but basically that's what you want to channel the whole story through anyway, is your characters, because that is how your audience is going to care about and connect to this world. Because what we don't want to do is make it feel like we're reading an encyclopedia entry about the rise and fall of this particular empire with no personal stake for the audience member. Set up a character or a few characters that we are interested in following. And you can use the previous video that I made about how to make an audience member like buy into your character and be invested in your character right away. Okay. And come up with a really great, interesting antagonist or antagonistic force that they're, butting heads against. And then weave and channel all of your use those other areas of conflict, use the economics, use the political, and use the religious conflicts to tell the story of these characters and how they change, for good or for ill, the fate of these kingdoms and the world. Amen. So that's my answer. I don't know. I think the TLDR was more because I had to get to that point. I had to go on this journey mentally also to be like, what is the answer? And then distill it down into the TLDR. And now I'm talking too much. And so I'm just going to leave it there. Listen, have a great day. Love you. See you next time. All right. And listen, go out and take a walk. Okay. Go get some sun if your area is still sunny. All right. Breathe some fresh air. Get off your phone. Stop scrolling for a minute and live life because you need to. All right. Love you. Bye.